may be on the call. I see a 724 number. I think he may be on.
I think, yeah, that looks like his number.
So Randy,
okay, let's go ahead.
Board agenda. Go ahead, Mr. President. I apologize.
No problem. Let's go ahead with the opening. At this point, at 6:03, I'll call the meeting to order. Rob, if you would please give us the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, sir. If everyone would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Jared, how about a roll call?
Yes, sir. Barb Barker.
Here.
Tammy Blank.
Here.
Cinda Brode.
Here.
Julia Tamarki Kukuro.
Present.
Tom Harley.
Here. Randy, can you mute me again?
Mr. Kerr.
Present.
Mrs. Sleeper.
Present.
Mrs. Lowry.
Present.
Mr. Schroed.
Here. Okay, thanks, Jared. I would like to welcome everybody for coming out on this Monday after Thanksgiving for this special meeting. I don't have a formal board president's message, but I do want to point out that the purpose of tonight's meeting, I essentially called the meeting or asked Mike to set it up, as we have to look at and vote on an attestation that the board chair, myself, was required to sign based on an order from the governor and the Department of Health. And I felt uncomfortable signing that order without some public discussion, as well as getting approval from the board. Everything that we do here that I must sign has to have some sort of board approval. And I felt this was not the time to deviate from that, hence this meeting that we're having tonight. So I hope everybody understands why the purpose of this meeting tonight. Jared, was there anybody signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, are there any representatives from IAEA, ASME, SGA, or Stuka online tonight? Moving on down, I don't believe there are any presentations. Can we have the approval of tonight's agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, please indicate we'll vote in the negative. If you object to tonight's amendment, please say nay or no at this point. The chair assumes that the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have no board reports tonight. We're down to academic and extracurricular committee. Tom?
Walter, I'm going to take those since Tom called in. So we'll do 5.1 health and safety plan revisions. The administration recommends approval of a change to the COVID-19 school. Hold on, girl, scrolling too fast. School reopening plan and corresponding amendments to its health and safety plan to reflect a shift to a remote learning model in the form of a real-time synchronous virtual instruction model for the entirety of pre-K through 12th grade classes effective November 23rd, 2020, and continuing until December 1, 2020. On December 2nd, 2020, some at-risk students will be brought back to the buildings for in-person instruction. The majority of students will come back on December 7th. The superintendent of schools will continue to monitor the rates and amount of active cases to determine the safest mode of education for our students in adherence to IASD's health and safety plan.
Second.
Okay, it's moved in the second. Mike, I'll let you up first, and then we'll open it up to the board to explain the changes that we're working on this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. Give me one moment. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll go from there. Mr. President, I have my screen full screen. Is everyone able to see my screen at this time, sir?
I can see it.
Okay. So what I like to do is just give the public and give the board an update of what happened on 11/23 around 2 p.m. and what the impacts of that could be for the Indiana area school district, and then come to the consensus of what direction this board wants to take. So what we did here is on the first slide on November 23rd around 2 p.m., Governor Wolf and Secretary Levine came out and required school to sign an attestation with two options, right? Option one, we have to agree to adhere to the updated order regarding facial coverings, and we'll continue to enforce the order. And then the second part of option one, read and agree to the following recommendations following an identification of a case. It's important to point out with option one, whether I have all kids back, some, or just one of the students back within the public school entity, we would have to go option one. So let me explain that. Option one, you have to have two parts. You basically agree to wear and abide by the mask order, and two, depending on their matrix and metrics for number of identified cases, you agree to close as per their matrix. But if you have only one kid or 100 or 1,000 or 3,000 kids in, if you do that, you have to go with option one. Option number two, you agree to go fully remote learning, and will continue to use a fully remote model until Indiana County is no longer experience substantial disease transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. Failure to complete this attestation by November 30th would result in the district going 100% remote, and that no athletics or extracurriculars or activities would be taken in place. So here's what I did. As we discussed, I signed the attestation and I submitted it saying that we are on remote, and as the motion reflects, we are on remote instruction November 23rd till December 1st. And that allows us to have time and discussion tonight to decide going forward, what options do you want to pursue? Option one, as explained, or option two? And I'll go in a little bit more detail. And I really want to spend a lot of my time looking at option one, because I think we have a responsibility to our families and to our students and to this board to explain what our current health and safety plan looks like and make sure that it meets the requirements of the updated state's expectations. So let's attack this in two separate issues. One, first being the mask, and then second, the number of cases identified. So let's talk about the mask. Our board approved health plan already addresses this requirement. You can see highlighted in green, we are requiring kids to wear masks unless they opt out underneath the sections that they're permitted to under IDEA or through their 504 plan. But more than that, sir, not only meeting that requirement, in my opinion, we already have taken additional steps to mitigate the spread of the virus in regards to masks. And we did two things. One, we prohibited a certain facial covering type, and that's the one that's illustrated on the left-hand side. Those masks are no longer permitted because we saw that they were somewhat susceptible to spreading the virus, and we were kind of concerned with that. So several months ago, we banned and disallowed that from happening for both staff as well as students. And then additionally, as we notified our families, we now require a mask at recess time, because what we found was with some of their most recent cases, when the Department of Health came in and did their inquiry, they would ask certain questions. And if we could not guarantee kids were not yelling, screaming, or having fun out at recess, basically, that those kids would also have to be quarantined. So we thought, look, that's hard to control, right? It's recess. It's a time for kids to relax and have fun. But if it allows us to stay open, let's require them to wear the mask at recess. However, we're still going to have mask breaks. So with the first requirement, we are adhering to the facial coverings. Nothing has changed in that area. And in fact, we increased our efforts by prohibiting the certain type that's illustrated again on the screen, and by wearing masks outside at recess at all times. Again, the only time they could take it off is anything that falls under IDEA 504 plans and or with the recess, or I'm sorry, with eating lunch. And we made sure we took preventive steps to hopefully prohibit, staff from being quarantined in future issues. So I feel comfortable where we are with the mask. And I want to give a lot of credit to the staff, to the families for adhering to this requirement. And I see great compliance because everyone's pulling together, do what they can to try to maintain and keeping our schools open. And that's what I see. So again, the big point out of here is two things with the mask. One, our health and safety plan already addresses that. We require it. And two, we took additional actions by prohibiting the certain types of face masks that I explained twice, as well as requiring masks at recess now. Let's look at the other part, though. And I don't want to be flippant when I say this, and I want to spend some time discussing it. Is what you look at PD's new plan. Our current plan is more restrictive and conservative than their plan, but there's a lot of similarities, and it's something to be proud of for the district as we try to stay open and maintain a safe environment. You see the whole entire Commonwealth's model now mirroring what we're doing to some extent. Now, am I saying they looked at our model and copied it? Absolutely not. What I'm saying is we put a lot of thought in our plan, and it's being reflective now because you see that we are pretty close to what the state's looking at. So on the left-hand side, let's look at our current plan. Our current health and safety plan requires us to look at number of cases by building, right? Regardless of the building side. So whether it's the high school or elementary school, we look at the number of cases by building. And we agreed that if we have 2 to 4 cases within a 2-week period, we'll close for 3 to 7 days. And again, regardless of size, we'll close when we get to 2 to 4 cases. And that's what we've done. On the 23rd of November, the governor came out with some additional updates to their health and safety requirements, and they went based upon size of the building, meaning the number of students. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, in a small building, which they define less than 500 students, if you get 2 to 4 cases, you have to close for 3 to 7 days. And then if you get in a 500 building, 500, 900, if you get 4 to 6 cases, you have to close for 3 to 7 days. Now, let me be upfront. I find little value in closing for 3 days. I find the value, if you're going to close, about the 5 to 7 day value, because that's where you see the amount of spread occurring and people being contagious. So I want to be upfront and honest with that. And that's not to upset anyone in the public or our families. It's just to be honest. I'm not sure what the 3-day closure gets compared to a 5 or 7 when we have more time to hopefully stop and mitigate the spread of the virus. But again, on the left-hand side, you'll see ours is based on number of cases in building, regardless of size, which is 2 to 4 cases. On the right-hand side, the state took a similar course of action, but they made it by the number of people in each school. If you look at our current enrollment, the number of kids who are just in school, that excludes the number of kids who are cyber completely, and it excludes the number of kids who may be home study or in cyber. We 2 of our schools, the junior high and senior high, fall in that 500 to 900 category, and the rest of our buildings fall in to that 500 or less category. So what you see at the elementary level, our plan aligns exactly to what the state came out with months later after us. When you look at the secondary level, our plan is more conservative, where we have 2 to 4 cases. They're proposing 4 to 6 cases. The board tonight will have to consider what they want to do there. In my opinion, even though the 4 and 6 cases gives you more leeway, more latitude, I don't find that to be prudent at the current time, looking at the number of cases we're having in Indiana County and across the Commonwealth. Now, the board can come back and say, Mike, that's fine. I appreciate your input, but let's follow the state's expectations. And we'll talk about that at the end. But again, I think what the public needs to know is we were ahead of this from the get-go. When we developed our plan, you'll see our plan falls pretty closely in line with that of the state's new revised conditions. And it's a little bit more conservative at the secondary level than what the state provides. And we'll have to discuss that as we go forward here momentarily. Now, here's the one chart I wanted to explain, and I know it's going to be a little bit of confusing because they kind of look similar, but what I want you to pay attention to is hopefully you can see what I highlighted, the different numbers and ranges. So let's take some time and go over this. So when you look at the community spread level, we're insubstantial, and we have been there for quite some time, and I don't know if we'll get out when you look at the current rates going on across the county and as well as the Commonwealth. And that's why, back in October, we decided, look, we need to look at the number of cases per building. And our plan, again, mirrored pretty closely to what the state's new expectations that came out on November 23rd are. So a number of cases, 1 to 3, right? So in a small building, 500 to 900, 1 to 3 cases, and less than 500, they're telling you what we should do. In this case, consider altering the schedule to significantly decrease the number of students on site, clean areas where case spent time, and notify and work with your public health staff. In the next category, which I'm going to try to highlight in yellow just for the sake of this call, you'll see 4 to 6 cases in the 500 and 900 building, and then the 2 to 4 in the 500 building. You should close for 3 to 7 days, reduce the number of kids in the buildings, clean areas where spent, and then work with public health. And then in the last column, you'll see 7+ student staff and 5+ student staff. What should be done? And the only difference is the number of days in which it should be closed. Now, if you pay attention to the asterisk, if the case investigations, contact tracing, and cleaning and disinfecting can be accomplished at a faster time frame, the length of closure time may be shortened. That decision, my understanding, should be determined and hopefully will be determined by the Department of Health, and as far as reducing our closure. But this gives you some ranges. This gives you an idea of the number of cases. And again, you'll see here momentarily, our plan called for that months ago, which we're lucky, and it's somewhat fortuitous that the plan is aligned. So let's move on to what our plan states. And again, when we notified parents of this back in September and then updated in October, we were consistent across the board with our ranges, right? We said 2 to 4, and we said 2 to 4 cases will close for 3 to 7 days. 5 or more will close for 14 days, and that nothing has really changed in that regard. And we've been pretty consistent and pretty fortunate that we predicted this, and the state and us align to that manner. Again, the state's plan does allow us to increase the number of cases required for closing at the secondary level. You're going to decide if you want to do that. Right now, in the middle, the rates rising like they are, our plan's been working where other schools have closed multiple times. We've only had to face one closure, so I don't know if it's in our best interest to adhere to the state's requirement or keep a more conservative approach. And I'll defer to you and your judgment on how you want to proceed with that. Again, at this point, I'd recommend we stay with the course with our current metrics and plans. I'm not sure that middle of this pandemic spreading as fast as is, now's the right time to lessen our mitigation efforts. But again, we can definitely do that and fall in line with the state's expectations. So again, my goal tonight is to make you aware of what your options you have, what's contained within each option, and then how's our current plan match up to what's going on here in Indiana Area School District. So next question I'm assuming you could have is, Mike, how many cases do you have right now? And right now, from 11/8 to 11/24, or I'm sorry, 11/30, we had 28 cases in the school district. We asked Tracy Pecor to contact the Department of Health today. As of today at noon, no further cases from the Indiana Area School District have been reported to Department of Health. So what that means for us is, with no more cases from now, from the day we went on Thanksgiving break until December 7th, we could possibly start December 7th with 0 active cases in the district. So if we want to return, we are meeting the state's obligations and requirements with number of active cases and adhering to the metrics that they develop. So we could start on December 7th with no active cases and allow us to get some in-person instruction together. The next slide, I just want to spend some time going over with the public and they understand what we're doing. So that one previous slide on the blue table chart, I'll click to it real quick. Again, they had these columns down here, these things that we must do, these considerations we must take based on number of cases we have. And what we did was we broke each one of them down, right? So let's look at the first one. They're saying school should consider altering schedule to significantly decrease the number of students on site. And I would argue and present tonight, I think we're already doing that. And how are we doing it? At the K-5 level, we put mandatory in place 6 feet social distancing that invested anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 to ensure that we met that moment to get kids in K-5 in schools, in our schools 5 days a week. At the secondary level, we created a hybrid model in place to allow us to reach that expectations of 6 feet social distancing. So the first item, how can we consider altering our schedule to significantly decrease number of students? I think we're doing that, right? Again, by having the 6 feet in place at the K-5 level and at the secondary level, running the hybrid model, I think we are meeting that moment. We already agreed that we'd close for 3 to 7 days. In fact, we took a more conservative approach on our decision making. And so I think we're already doing that as well. Every day we're cleaning, and in case of an outbreak, we're even cleaning even further. And also our nurses are doing an incredible job working with the public health staff to determine close contacts and who need to be quarantined. And that's depending on the information we have. There's a series of questions the nurse have to go through. They're answering that, and they're working together to try to figure that out. And they're doing a great job with as far as quarantining. Now, we said from day one, expect a large number of kids to be quarantined as a part of being open. And I know that upsets families. I know that's difficult for us as an institution because we want our kids in school. But if we are going to stay open, we have to abide by those expectations. And it's been painstaking at times. It's been hurtful for families. I understand that, but it's allowing us to stay open. So the mitigation efforts we have taken thus far seem to have paid off, and there's been a return on that investment thus far. We just got in a bad week that week. We decided to close where we had 14 to 18 cases in a 4-day span, and I had to make a decision, and I stand by that decision because something had to be done to help mitigate the spread. Now, you would argue, or you could argue, that it's working. Based upon the call with the Department of Health today, no new cases as of noon today is a good sign, or it's just a sign that no one's contacted the Department of Health yet, and there's more to come. We don't know, and we'll just have to take it for what it's worth. Next thing I want to bring up to you is some recent actions by the governor himself and his leadership and his team. And, if you're saying, well, Mike, I'm scared, I'm concerned about opening, again, you have the right to close this. It's whatever you really decide and what you want to do. But I do want to include some recent actions in the press and the media that will give you hopefully some better comfort with the decision you're making, or at least some different factors to consider. Governor Wolf, as well as new governors, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, got together, and they made a joint message about the importance of in-person education. And I have an excerpt for you, and it says, medical research as well as the data from northeastern states from across the country and from around the world make clear that in-person learning is safe when appropriate protections are in place, even in communities with high transmission rates. My goal this evening is, it's up for you to decide what you want to do. My goal this evening is to let you know how hard the staff and everyone's working to make sure that our schools are as safe as they can be by the mitigation efforts we put in place with regards to the mask, with regards to social distancing we have in place. And, will it be 100% preventative in having a spread through our schools? Absolutely not. You have to decide if you feel comfortable. But I want to give you a little bit of information what I see from the governor. Now, this is also somewhat hard to understand because the two agencies that work and serve him, in this case, Department of Health and Department of Education, also are the same organizations that said sometimes that we should look at closing. And we did such. But I wanted to give you some latitude and flexibility because I wouldn't, in case you would say, Mike, what's going on at the state level, Harrisburg level? Well, this is the most recent thing I can find, but they came out with a message about the importance of in-place learning as long as you're doing it safely. They're not saying you do it recklessly. In my opinion, they're not saying open recklessly. They're saying take proper precautions, adhere to those safety procedures, and then if you're doing that, then it could be safe for kids. But if it's not, then don't open. And that's what you have to decide tonight, whether or not the precautions that we're taking and we have enacted are safe and you feel comfortable with reopening. So, again, let's talk about your decisions tonight, and I'll try to be straightforward if I can. Option one, you're agreeing to adhere to updated order regarding facial coverings, which I think we should, and we already have done that, and we're continuing to adhere to the facial covering, so nothing's changed there. There are some conditions that preclude people from wearing masks. That's identified in our health and safety plan, so nothing has changed there. So I feel comfortable meeting that requirement. But here's the big one. You have to read and agree to follow the recommendations following a possible closure of identification cases. So again, that goes back to their table of number of cases, what we should do and how long we should close. And that's going to upset and hurt people. But by agreeing to this attestation, we're going to agree to follow those rules that they put forth. And that's their rules, which again, our plan was already reflective of that. But I want to be clear because there will be somewhat of a deviation where we may not be able to have some at-risk populations in during future closures unless things change. Now, this came out on November 23rd or November 22nd. I can't remember the day, and look how it can change tomorrow. But I want to be clear on the options you have. Or option two, fully remote learning, and we'll continue to use the fully remote learning model until Indiana County is no longer experiencing substantial disease transmission for 2 consecutive weeks. I can't tell you if we'll ever get out of that category or when we'll get out of that category. So I want to be clear and transparent on the options you have. Now, a couple things. As I spoke earlier, I did send an attestation for remote learning from November 23rd to December 1st, and that allows me to meet that requirement that we were supposed to, November 30th deadline. We've done so. So depending on which decision we choose tonight, I will need to submit another one that allows us to open on December 2nd for some at-risk populations based on active case numbers, and the rest of our students on December 7th. I know there may be an appetite or could be an appetite to open up fully prior to December 7th. I would not recommend that at this point. Then you may say, well, Mike, who's at risk? And Mr. Zahorchek, Mr. Heinrich, and myself need to work with those populations and work as a team to see who we can bring back and when we can bring them back. For example, right now, our case numbers at the high school and junior high would and could preclude us from bringing everyone back until December 7th. However, at the elementary, due to the low number of cases they have, we could bring some of the at-risk kids back earlier than that. We have to talk that through. So if, depending what you do tonight, we would spend tomorrow walking through those scenarios. And this motion that you're going to have gives us some flexibility to go and reach those families and talk to them and make the arrangements to bring some of those students back. But we have to be open and honest. We can't do it for everyone. And it's not because we don't want to. It's because this attestation we're going to sign will be aligned and hold us to those accountability numbers, and we must adhere to them. Again, so we need to decide if we are reopening for in-person instruction starting on Wednesday for some at-risk students and then for everyone else on the 7th as communicated. No new cases reported over the holiday break. However, reason why I would not say just open up right away is because we don't know how many phone calls will come in tomorrow and or Wednesday. How many parents may have been waiting until schools were open to work with us and contact us. We did get some calls late last week, but nothing since Wednesday or Thursday on. So we just want to be smart about this, and I'd issue a word of caution. Again, we might want to consider sticking with the current plan as we may get several cases / confirmed calls this week, and I would hate to see us open completely for a day or two, only to close for another 7. Thus, you might, again, want to consider sticking with the original plan, as I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow or Wednesday. And I think the nurses need time to contact the Department of Health, to work with them, and to see what their calls may look like. We previously communicated to our families we would open on December 7th. This motion gives Justin and his team a little bit of latitude to bring other at-risk populations back sooner. But remember this, signing that attestation locks us into the ranges that were previously explained. It means the state's ranges. I would recommend we stick with our ranges because that plan has gotten us pretty far. But again, you can decide to go with the state plans, which is not as conservative as us, but our plan has got us this far. And those are motions that you're facing tonight. I know I spoke a lot, and I'll give some time for the board to deliberate on this. And again, you can pick one or two options. If you choose not to open, that is your option. You can do that. However, we put a plan together, and I hopefully presented a case tonight that shows you that the work that our team, our teachers, and our students are doing to keep us safe, that if we did open, it wouldn't be doing so reckless fashion. It'd be doing so adhering to the state's newest expectations. And I'm hopeful we presented a case that explains that tonight, Mr. President. So with that said, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Zahorchak, is there anything you want to add before I turn it over to committee? I'm sorry, to the board for discussion?
No, I don't have anything else, Mike. Thanks.
Neither do I.
Okay, with that said, Mr. President, I'll turn it back over to you, sir, and address any questions or comments that you may have.
Okay, Mike, I think it's important, though, that you reiterate why you don't want to fully open before next Monday, because I know that is a question that's been out there in the community. So could you go over that again?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Again, I'm not telling you my logic is correct, but here's why. By closing when we did, open on December 7th, that allows us 17 days of a closure and allows us to wipe our active cases clean. If we were to open fully, at this point, we cannot open fully at their secondary level because we would still have active cases. And based on the number of cases we have, it constituted a 2-week closure. December 2nd would not meet that 2-week measure. Now, at the elementary school, you have some wiggle room. We are talking, Mr. Zahorchak was talking, advocating for the need to bring back some at-risk populations because they only had, at this point, 1 active case at Ben Franklin, none at Ike, 2 at Horseman, and then East Pike, by us closing earlier, reset that model for them as well. So we have some leeway at the elementary level, but at the secondary level, we still have active cases that preclude us from opening fully. So that would be against the attestation. And I know it's going to upset families, but again, we have to make a decision tonight. By signing this attestation, do you want to agree to the option 1 or option 2? I think option 1, getting them in a safe manner anytime, is better than just fully remote. However, that's the decision the board has to decide. But I'll tell you this, sir, our nurses have done an incredible job trying to manage this and work with families. And yes, they have quarantined a lot of people, and I support every decision they made because they've done it out of safety and the best interest of our kids. There's no real blueprint for this. We're building it as our own, and they're doing an amazing job working with the Department of Health. I do think there is a lag time in the Department of Health getting back to us because they're overwhelmed, and that's not saying they're not doing their job, so don't take it that way. I just think I think there's a backlog, and I think we have to be honest and upfront about that. But reason why we can't, I would recommend December 7th. The last reason I remember waiting until December 7th for the going back to our original plan, I think the nurses need time to work with the Department of Health to see if there's any other cases that may come. So, for example, another scenario, Horace Mann has 2 active cases. If we were to find out they get 2 more cases and open up, then they may be forced to close down longer. So I don't want to rush it, other than the at-risk populations that we can at the areas and grade levels we can. For everyone else, I'd like to wait till December 7th because that's what we already communicate with families, and that will allow us and the organization time to see if there's any more cases coming this week. But as of right now, though, as of noon today, we've had no new cases that the district was made aware of. I asked Tracy to call the Department of Health and speak to them directly, and that was as of noon today, sir.
Okay, Mike, thanks again for that reiteration there. Randy, I think we could put the motions back up on the screen for everybody to see. And we do have one motion on the table to make that modification in the plan. At this point in time, I'll open it up for board comment or discussion.
Walter, this is Tom Harley.
Go ahead, Tom.
I congratulate Mike and the team to present such a clear argument for the opening up as quickly as we can. I encourage him to define the special needs students as broadly as he wishes, and bring as many kids back as quickly as he can. But I also I would encourage the board to follow the safety plan that the board has in place, knowing that the state's numbers are a little bit higher. I think a conservative attitude on this is the right way to go. So I'm in favor of moving ahead as quickly as we can to get out of remote if that's possible, and we can go ahead and do that. Randy, you can mute me again.
Okay, anybody else have any comments, suggestions, or questions on the motion and plan as presented?
Walter, this is Uda. We've spent a lot of time coming up with a health and safety plan, both for our schools and for our extracurriculars and athletics throughout the district. And I think the plan has been working. I'd like us to stick with the plan as we have written it, even though the state recommendations may not be quite as stringent. And we still afford parents the option, if they don't feel comfortable sending their student to school, that they can have their student participate and attend 100% remotely through either synchronous or asynchronous. And my understanding is all they need to do is reach out to the principal or the staff at the administration. So I think, I think we should stick with the plan as we have written it and continue to provide for that flexibility for community members who may not want to send their kids to face-to-face instruction.
Okay, Uda, thank you. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. It's probably for Mike. In the motion, what is meant by the majority of students will come back on the 7th? Does that mean splitting the half of the hybrid group will come back on the 7th and then the other half will come back on the 10th? Or what's meant by that sentence?
Yeah, no, good question, Mr. Curran. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to clarify. What is meant by that statement is the following: that we on December 7th return to what we were prior to closure, meaning elementary would be coming back 5 days a week, 6th grade would be coming back 4 days a week, and grades 7 through 12 would resume the hybrid model on Monday. That's exactly what that means. And it means what we would also meet the lessening of the number of students in the building by at K to 5, maintaining and adhering to the 6 feet of social distancing, and then at the secondary level, maintaining the hybrid model. There's no easy decision here tonight, but my goal tonight was to give you options and make sure you're comfortable either, and I'm fine, whatever you decide I'll run with. If you want to close, that's an option, but if you want to open, I didn't want you just to know that we're not doing it recklessly. But that's what that motion means regarding December 7th. Does that answer your question, Mr. Kerr?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Mr. President, if you don't mind, the only thing I'll add into what we have to be honest and realistic with everyone on this call tonight and with ourselves is that there could be another closure coming down the road, depending on the number of cases we have. And by us signing this attestation, if we want to be open, we're agreeing to follow that plan that we developed, right? It's our plan. We developed it, but we're going to have to stick to that because that attestation is requiring us so. And there's no, from what I understand, and I'm not an attorney, but there's no way around that, sir. And I just want to be completely transparent on that. When people, I got called a lot of names, coward, I got called a lot of things for decisions we made to close. And I don't take any of them lightly. I stand by my decision because, 18 cases in 4 days was a lot of things to do. Not only do we have to educate our kids, but we also protect our kids and our staff. So I stand by the decision I made. But moving forward, there could be future closes, small-term closures, long-term. I don't know what the future holds, and I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just trying to prepare everyone that if things come to this point, I'm going to make the same decision and use the same decision-making we used in the past because we're going to have to. Now we're testing. We're going to do so. And I know that sounds melodramatic, Mr. President, but I think during these tough times, it's not only important to be transparent, but it's also important to be clear with our families that we are now adhering to the state's expectations that they put upon us, which, again, our plan was much more conservative. I'm proud of the work we did, but I just want to be open and forthright on that because none of these are easy decisions, none of them at all.
Mr. Schroth, this is Julia. I'm inclined to approve 5.1. I think that, Mike, you're making a sensible argument, and it's worked for us so far. Naturally, we can't predict the future. But back in August, we couldn't predict the future either. But we've had so few closings. And we don't know what will happen with the cases going forward. But I'm comfortable with approving 5.1, though, like the other speakers, I prefer our more conservative numbers. So that's where I am. But I appreciate very much what all you and your staff and the faculty has done to make this possible. I know it's been a long grind and getting longer every day. But nevertheless, I think we've done a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Okay.
I tend to agree with everybody. This is a very tough decision, but I think we need to open the schools as safely as possible. And I just want to plead to the community to follow the recommendations, whether you believe them or not. That is what has helped us keep our kids open. There are people walking around town without masks in numerous stores, and that is putting us at risk for closure. And that's all I can say. Our students are following the rules. The adults need to follow them too. And that is what will keep our schools open. So I will support this motion.
I also want to thank the administration and everyone for doing such hard work. With the plan that we have in place, I feel a lot safer having my kids go to the school than I do having them come with me to Walmart. So I am all for it.
Okay, Cinda, I think you and Barb are the only two that haven't commented. Is there anything you'd like, you or Barb would like to say?
Yeah, I had my hand off, but I don't know I can't see if anybody else is raising their hand or not. But anyhow, yes, I think we should stay the course. I think we've done a good job so far. And Tamara said something that I really think, the administration has to have congratulations for working so hard and keeping us where we are. But the students also need to know what a good job they've done and how important it is that they keep doing it. They are following the rules to an extent that I didn't think they would do. I honestly didn't. But I'm very, very proud of the students, and I hope that the adults in the community will follow their lead and keep on doing everything we can so everybody can stay in school.
And Mr. President, if I can just echo Ms. Cinda's comment, she's spot on. And the only thing I'd add to it, again, our staff and our nurses, those poor nurses, I think, are sick of talking to me every day. But they held my hand through this whole mess, and they keep educating me on this. And we're working as a team, and we're doing the best we can, all of us. And the staff has done an amazing job. The nurses have done an amazing job. So we realize the decision you make tonight is not going to make everyone happy, and I'm not expecting so. What I'm expecting tonight is to present you with facts and the supporting details for you to make an informed decision. Whatever you decide, I'll do.
Okay, Mike. Barb, I think you're the only one on the board that hasn't had a comment on this. Would you like to chime in at this point?
Yes, we worked long and hard on this plan, and it's a good plan. And we saw with a lot of our first cases, we didn't have community spread within the schools, meaning our plan was working, and we had some parts of the plan things to work how some of our staff interacted, but it looks like the plan is working. The problem is we have too much community spread. And if we are able to open up on December 7th, if we don't get the community spread down, we will just have very quickly more cases. And it won't necessarily be from spread within the schools, but from what the students do outside of the schools and what their parents do. And I can tell there's about 74 people on this meeting right now. And I'm asking each one of you to go home and make sure your neighbors, your friends, know that if the community doesn't start taking this seriously, our schools will be shut down again. And this shutting down the schools deeply impacts the mental health of our students. And, it's very important to have the schools open that we can educate our kids and help them. And so I ask anyone on this meeting to do your part with helping the community to understand that in order to keep our schools open, the community has to follow safety protocols that the state asks. But I do support our health and safety plan going forward from here.
Okay, thank you. My comments basically this evening are, number one, I want to reiterate to the community that, ultimately our goal here is to get our children back into their seats in their classroom as quickly as we can and keep them there as long as we can. That's certainly our long-term outlook and perspective. Short-term goal, though, I think we really need to kind of try to sprint towards December the 18th. And why December the 18th? Because it's the Friday before Christmas, and we have a kind of a regularly scheduled Christmas break that starts the following week, and that would buy us an additional 14 days or better, probably closer to 17, including the weekends, that we could be in that remote and or off for the holidays. And what I think everybody also needs to understand, and Mike alluded to this in his presentation, or presented some of this information in his presentation, we're resetting the clock. In this case, it's not a time clock, but it's the clock counting the number of cases. And if between now and next Monday, there are very few cases that show up, we have the chance to possibly set that clock back to 0, which then gives us another 2 weeks run at this thing, that we can, try to keep the kids back in the classroom where they really need to be. So, for the short term, let's see if we can't have Mike work his magic again and try to keep things going as best he can till December the 18th. One last call for comments, questions, or discussion amongst the board members before we take the vote. Nothing heard. Jared, let's do a roll call on this, please.
Tammy Blank,
Yes.
Cinda Brode,
Yes.
Julia Tamarki Kukro,
Yes.
Tom Harley,
Yes.
Mr. Kerr,
Yes.
Mrs. Leeper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lowry,
Yes.
Mr. Schroed,
Yes.
Mayor Barker,
Yes.
motion passes 9-0.
Okay, Jared, thank you. Uta, do you want to work on 5.2?
Sure. That the board authorizes the superintendent of schools and board president to sign an attestation confirming that the school district has transitioned to a remote learning model and will continue to use this learning model until December 1, 2020, or until the superintendent of schools determines it is necessary. Furthermore, it is the will of the board to resubmit the attestation prior to December 2nd, 2020 to continue to operate in the district's current hybrid model while adhering to the terms in the attestation. On December 2nd, 2020, some at-risk students will be brought back to the buildings for in-person instruction. The majority of students will come back on December 7th. The superintendent is further authorized to take any and all actions necessary to comply with the requirement related to the attestation, including but not limited to submission to the PA Department of Education, amendment of the district's health and safety plan, and public posting to the school's district website.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Again, my opening comments, while I signed that attestation for Mike, with Mike to stay, open remote today to meet the letter of the law, it was based on the recommendation of Ron Raypack that we could do this, but I really felt uncomfortable doing anything more than that without the board's full discussion and authorization to proceed with that signature of the attestation. Mike, would you like to add anything to that at this point?
No, sir. I just want everyone to know how hard we're working and trying to work together and figure this out. It's going to be ever evolving and change is going to come. And I know it's going to be topsy-turvy, but when you're open, sir, these are the challenges we're going to have to face. And I apologize for all the emails we send families, but the goal is not to overwhelm, but the goal is to over-communicate. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Be clear on our intentions, prevent a strong rationale why we're doing what we're doing, but be as flexible as we can to all the families and students in need to the best of our ability, sir.
Okay, at this point, I'll throw it open to the board. Questions, comments, or further discussion on this motion?
So I do have a question, just to be certain that I understand. On December 2nd, some at-risk students will be brought back to the buildings for in-person instruction. Am I correct that that's only elementary? Because
yes. Yep.
Okay.
No, nope, that's good question, though, Ms. And if I can elaborate it just one more time, it helps me understand it. So when we look at our COVID dashboard, number of cases we have, we still at the high school, at the junior high and secondary high, we still have a number of kids, number of active cases that preclude us from opening because our slate isn't clean right now, meaning we had like 9 cases at the high school that would require a 2-week shutdown. That 2-week window will not be over until, I think, over the weekend. So in my understanding of the situation, it would preclude us from bringing kids back. However, at the elementary level, we are okay to bring kids back because Ben Franklin has 1 case, Horace Mann has 2 cases, Ike has 0 at this time, and East Pike went through their window. So what we're going to do, Ms. Cinda, is Mr. Zahorchek tomorrow is going to look at our programming areas and see where he can bring people back and where it's safe and adheres to the law. So there will be some gray area, Ms. Cinda, and that's why I'm trying to give him some time tomorrow, not starting people back until December 2nd, because we had some people reach out and say, look, I want my kids back in. They need to be back in. I have teachers reaching out saying, look, we want to be back in. And right now, we're not ready for tomorrow. I'd like Mr. Zahorchek to spend some time reviewing all the cases, reviewing the data, reviewing the needs, and then make an informed decision. Now, that's a smaller population, so him and his team can contact them easily tomorrow. And I think he's already started some of that communication and planning. But I just told him to hold off until tonight until we were all on the same page and I got direction from the board. Mr. Zahorchek, anything you want to elaborate to that?
No, like you said, we've already contacted a lot of folks and a lot of parents So yeah, we're in a good spot. So if there is a decision made, we'll be ready to move.
Did I answer your question, Ms. Cinda?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anybody else? Going once? Twice? Thrice? All right, Jared, let's go ahead with another roll call on this one as well. Thank you.
Cinda Brode,
Yes.
Juliet Markey Kukrow,
Yes.
Tom Harley,
Yes.
Mr. Kerr,
Yes.
Mrs. Leeper,
Yes.
Mrs. Lowry,
Yes.
Mr. Schroed,
Yes.
Barb Barker, Barb Barker,
Yes.
Tammy Blank,
Jared,
Looks
I
like
think Miss Cinda and I called it. I think she was going to answer, but hung up on herself.
I accidentally hit the hang up button instead of the microphone. Par for the course, but I vote yes.
motion passes 9-0.
Okay, Jared, thank you for that, and thank the board for that authorization as well. Randy, you want to scroll on down? I think that was all we had for this evening.
And Mr. President, while he's scrolling down, just want to let the families on the call know today and staff, tomorrow and/or Wednesday, we'll start working on a mass communication of families, update them about this, so what it means, and re-explaining the chart from PD so they understand what happened before. We just need some time to get that done. Justin will handle his work on the side, not the us, but we'll take care of the mass communication and we'll get things done, sir.
Okay, Mike, thank you. I see that on the little counter there, we've had 74 people tonight attending the meeting. Again, I want to thank you for doing that. I know we had a person try to make a public comment after the comment period at the beginning of the meeting closed. If they'd like to have public comment now, please indicate and say yes at this point.
Yes, Walter, that was myself, Ashley Klauser.
Okay, Ashley, go ahead, please.
I just want to thank you guys for making this possible. In the spring, when remote learning occurred, my son has autism. I'm going to try not get emotional, but it did not go well. He was hospitalized for 2 weeks because of severe behaviors that he developed because of the inconsistency and the lack of routine. I don't use my son's school district as a daycare or a babysitting service. My son needs to be in school. So this meeting tonight has given him the ability to be able to succeed in his education by being in the classroom. So for that, I am extremely appreciative for Mike and for Justin Zawarchik and for Jackie Bartolini, for everyone that's been advocating for those at-risk students to have that opportunity, because we had gotten to the point where my son was on average in the home setting, engaging in we needed to restrain him on average 3 times a week. Monday and Tuesday last week, he had to be restrained 5 times. He was engaging in severe aggression at that point. So we've already seen the magnitude of what remote learning will do for him. And we, as a family, my husband and myself, are just very appreciative that he has that opportunity to go back to school, because that's where he needs to be. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ashley, thank you for your comments. And Taylor, I think you've raised a hand. Would you like to make your comments at this point, please?
Hi. I just wanted to make a general comment showing my appreciation for everything that the entire school district has done for our children. And I also want to thank Mr. Vavuchik for being so transparent. It's just been remarkable how much information has gotten into the hands of us, the right information. And I just want to thank everyone who has been involved in this process.
Okay, thank you as well. I think Jackie had raised her hand. Do you have a public comment at this point?
Yes, I just want to reiterate, I thank administration greatly. Justin knows how much I'll push for the students in my room and for the board. I thank you so much for allowing me to go back in person with my students and give them the individual education that they need. It is beyond appreciated by me as a teacher longstanding in Indiana. I thank you all.
Okay, Jackie, thank you. I think Betsy Cernoso has also raised a hand. Would you like to comment at this time, Betsy? Betsy, did you raise your hand to speak, please? Betsy, I'm showing your mic was hot there, but nothing was coming through. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties there. Is there anybody else that has public comment on agenda items this evening? Okay, nothing heard. We did have an executive session on November the 23rd at 7 p.m. to discuss school safety. Our next next board meeting and committee meetings, we are going to have a Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee meeting scheduled for December 7th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. I do want to make everybody aware that this was at the request of the committee chairs. I always support the chairs of the various committees, and I know Terry has some things related to the Eisenhower entryway that he would like to discuss to help define some work that we'd like to assign our architect on. And there'll be a reorganization meeting on December the 7th at 7 p.m. And then a subsequent general meeting to follow. Just a quick note to board members, you should have received a copy of the agenda for the reorg meeting and or your official notification by mail. I received mine in today's mail. If you haven't received one in the next day or so, please contact Denise. Okay, Randy, what's after the 9.3? Adjournment. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Well, all those opposed to adjourning say nay or no at this time. Nothing heard. We stand adjourned. And again, my thanks to everyone for participating this evening. Again, there's a high of 74 participants, and that's outstanding night on November the 30th. Thanks again.
Thank you, Walter. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, everybody.
Josh Woodison with Renda Broadcast.